Hey class, so I received several emails about issues we have been experiencing with the SAGE articles. Some I were able to rectify, however others, which I just ran into the same problem, I'm not able to access the journals. So upon additional research, it appears that the company has now put something in place where you need tokens or something to gain full access to the SAGE articles, which we do not have apparently. Therefore, from this moment on, you are no longer required to do any of the SAGE article assignments, regardless if there is a quiz assigned to it or not. You do not have to do the SAGE articles. It doesn't make sense for me to continue to try to research and pull the articles and we're not able to access them. Great information. I was unaware of this. I just spoke with one of my colleagues. I guess they recently learned about it as well. I was unaware, so I do apologize for the frustration that I am certain that this has caused. So again, if you're watching this video, hopefully you're watching this video, anyone who emails me after 12:31 today, what is today? Today is Wednesday. Anyone who emails me after 12:31 today about SAGE articles, I will direct you to this video, okay? So don't worry about the SAGE articles. Look, it's not there. We're not able to access it. You're not going to be held responsible for it. So we'll just let that go. A few things I wanted to go over and come on and just go over a couple of things as we wrap up chapter 2, going into the next chapter. You see your book skips and says chapter 5 there when you talk about police organizations. But making sure you understood what you were reading and discussing when we were talking about the flow or the criminal justice process. So what does that look like? Let's say you commit a crime. The first thing after you've been booked and doing your book, that's when they're gathering information, any identifiable scars, fingerprinting you, things like that. You have your initial appearance, and this is on page 12 in your textbook. At your initial appearance, that's where you get informed of your charges, what you've actually been charged with. One thing to note, from the time you've been arrested to the time you go to your initial appearance, the charges can change. The charges can change. How and why? Because you have a state's attorney or the prosecuting attorney who will look at the facts of the case, and they may decide that, hey, actually we can also charge him with this or charge her with that, or whatnot. So just be aware that charges can change from the time you've been arrested to the time you had your initial appearance. However, you will be informed of what you're being charged with. After that, you have your preliminary hearing, and that's where they go and they determine if there's enough probable cause to go forth with the case. Is there enough probable cause that you committed this crime? Twofold. Understanding that preliminary hearing and a grand jury are exactly the same thing. A grand jury and a preliminary hearing are the exactly same things. A grand jury is used in felony cases, and that also depends on what state you're in, whether you will go through a preliminary hearing or a grand jury. If a grand jury, once they come through, you have a grand jury that they will issue what's called an indictment, meaning that there's sufficient evidence to say, yes, you've committed the crime. It's a very biased procedure, if you would say, being that the only evidence that the grand jury is actually looking at is evidence from the prosecution side. Another thing to note, because I know a lot of times when we watch news and we hear, oh, the grand jury was mostly made up of this or that, this race or that race. Grand juries are selected and have a 6-month, or it could be 4 to 6 months, depending on your state, like tenure, if you want to say, period, that they're serving. So what I'm saying is your grand jury individual, the individual who was started by your grand jury may be selected in January. You have no way to forecast or know what crime will be committed in, say, April, March, whatever. And whoever's on that grand jury is already serving on that grand jury. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're constantly hearing that and going with that. Preliminary hearing, grand jury. Preliminary hearing will issue an indictment. That's one thing I want you to make sure you understand. Then you go on, you have your arraignment, informed of the charges, advised of the right to a criminal defense attorney. You can enter your plea at that time, whether you're guilty or not. Remember, if you cannot afford an attorney, one will be appointed to you, but that does not mean that that attorney is totally free. You submit your paperwork saying what you can afford. It's like a financial verification sheet, and you are obviously granted legal counsel. However, it does not mean that it's totally free. You may have to pay. You will probably most likely have to pay some type of payment towards that when you're going. Then you have your trial after that. when you're looking at sentencing, and we're talking about sentencing, two things that you're looking at that judges are taking at, you have indeterminate sentencing and determinate sentencing. Determinate means that it's set. There's nothing to really discuss. Then you have indeterminate sentences where there's a range, right? And it has more discretion for the judge to say, I may sentence you to this or that. Aggravating and mitigating circumstances are things that are taken into consideration when you sentence it. So aggravating, if you think about something, it's something that's going to make the crime more gruesome or harsh, something that you could have done. Mitigating is something that's going to try to lessen that severity of that crime with that. Your book talks about determinate and indeterminate sentencing a little bit more. I just wanted to highlight a couple things with that. When we move on to start talking about policing and the evolution of policing, I think it is very important to notice the errors of policing. So kind of like where we've come from and how we evolved to where we're at today, when you start talking about Sir Robert Peel and the Bobbies and how they're still in existence today, and how we follow that actual structure of what we have today in there. So looking through those different eras of policing and what each era actually contributed to law enforcement. When you talk about that, how do we come up with the uniforms? How do we come up with a more formal organization of law enforcement? I see, I wanted to go over one other thing. I'm pulling up the course as I talk with you. You do have the 2 modules. I'll come on. We will do, and I'll go ahead and set this up. We will do a live chat on Friday. No, what's today? Today's Wednesday. Tomorrow. Let's do it tomorrow. Tomorrow, Thursday. Thursday evening, we will do a live chat. I will create it for you to log on. So we will have a live chat at 7 p.m. 7 p.m. tomorrow. Live chat. Let's talk about some things. We'll talk about the police organization. I'll also go ahead and talk about the introduction to courts. Give you some insight on that as you're preparing for those 2 modules. So tomorrow at 7 p.m. I'll go ahead and click that, create that Blackboard Collaborate, and you just log in. You can chat with me, or you can, if you have a camera, you can come on a camera. If you have questions, let's be ready to discuss those and anything you want to talk about. So again, I apologize for the Sage articles. I'm very disappointed. I apologize for the frustration because I know you pulling your hair out with that. But it is now resolved because you do not have to do it. You will not be held responsible. So hopefully I will see you tomorrow, 7 p.m. Log on through Blackboard Collaborate. Feel free to give me a call or shoot me an email if you have any other questions. Talk to you later.